She showed up after midnight. What was yours is no longer silent. The deal you trusted was undone in her shadow. You shook hands. She shattered vows. God broke the arrangement to protect your soul. The promise cracked the moment she whispered your name. She came last night with a spirit not sent by God. The paper was signed, but heaven ripped it. You didn't lose the deal. You were spared the destruction. What they planned together, God intercepted in darkness. Her presence rewrote your future. Now watch who disappears. The room they sealed, God walked through the wall. She arrived like a thief, yet heaven turned on the lights. You weren't betrayed. You were redirected. The covenant was false. God broke it with mercy. She came with a smile, but heaven heard the scream. He welcomed her. You suffered. Now, truth walks in. The contract was spiritual. The breach was divine. Your intuition wasn't wrong. She was. You prayed. She plotted. But God saw both. The enemy wears perfume too. Her presence marked the beginning of the unraveling. They made a deal with your name, hidden in the cost. God removed you before you drowned in her deception. The agreement was signed in pride. Now God writes in fire. You were left out of the deal, but not out of the plan. She came to collect what was never hers. The false peace you felt was God buying you time. They promised unity. God saw manipulation. She smiled too wide. He blinked too slowly. It was never love, it was a transaction. You felt a break before you knew why. She said it was harmless. God saw a soul wound forming. They hid it from you because truth couldn't survive light. God didn't expose her to hurt you, but to free you. You gave trust. They gave terms. She came in dressed as favor, but carried famine. The spirit behind her words? God rebuked it before it rooted. What you thought was delayed was actually destroyed. She knew your name before she met you. She entered with a contract. God answered with fire. He watched her approach and never warned you. You felt her spirit before you heard her voice. The dream you had? It ended the moment she stepped in. Her presence was prophecy, just not yours. You were the sacrifice. They were the schemers. God waited until she came to shatter the deal completely. She wore peace like perfume, but brought a storm inside her eyes. The lie didn't begin last night. It just got louder. The shift you felt wasn't fear. It was discernment. If this touched your soul, don't scroll. Comment your favorite quote and subscribe for more. You weren't overreacting. You were spiritually correct. The deal was paper, but your heart was the ink. God didn't forget. He just waited until she came. What they started together, God will end in silence. She carried false favor. God rejected the offer. He spoke of forever. She moved like interruption. You didn't imagine it. God was interrupting your heartbreak. What they made in shadows, God is unraveling in daylight. She came last night, but God came this morning. You were mourning a delay. Heaven was celebrating your escape. He gave her your time. God gave you back your future. Her kiss cost more than your soul could afford. They sold you out, but God bought you back. The contract failed because it was never in covenant. Her presence was the alarm clock to your awakening. What she touched fell apart. You were spared. You didn't lose him. You dodged her. Every secret ends in sacred exposure. The deal is broken because the lie couldn't hold your destiny. She smiled while erasing you. God smiled while restoring you. You were traded. God is returning you in glory. Her arrival was the beginning of your freedom. He let her in. God forced you out. The spiritual contract ended before they signed it. You didn't see it because you were still praying for him. She spoke softly, but your spirit screamed. He agreed to her terms, but he was never the author. The betrayal began in whispers. It ends in divine thunder. They sealed the deal. God sealed the judgment. She thought you'd never know. But God told your spirit everything. The one who replaced you was never really chosen. God removed you to recover you. Her presence gave you answers that silence never did. They tried to steal a promise. God shifted the whole season. The deal they made was never backed by heaven. You weren't broken. The illusion was. She came dressed in favor, but she was forged. You lost a man. You gained your life. What she brought he couldn't carry. The spirit she walked and couldn't stay where your calling lives. God revoked the offer and replaced it with healing. She walked in like a chapter, but you were the whole book. Her presence exposed his heart. They plotted. God promised. Watch who wins. She came with a plan. God came with a sword. He allowed the wrong one in. God locked the door behind her. It didn't fall apart. It was divinely dismantled. She didn't take him. God gave her the counterfeit. The bond broke when truth couldn't breathe. Her arrival ended what you were too loyal to leave. That night changed everything because you finally stopped denying the shift. She entered to destroy. God arrived to rebuild. You still love what God had to break. The deal's destruction is your soul's salvation. What she came to take, heaven already protected. They didn't win. They exposed their weakness. The real deal never needs to be stolen. You prayed for truth. She answered it with her presence. He traded something eternal for her temporary smile. God didn't wait for your permission to rescue you. You gave everything. They gave a performance. The contract didn't fail, it was never holy. You saw the red flags. Love made you mute. Now God's voice is louder than your denial. She came with charm. God came with revelation. You were not rejected. You were redirected to glory. They marked the papers. God marked your name in fire. The one you prayed for let her in. You waited. They wandered. God wept. What left you crying? Left God cleansing the path. The sword is drawn. Truth will cut. Your name won't stay in that contract. They don't know heaven has seen everything. She's not the curse. She's the confirmation. The deal ended in silence. Now listen for the storm. They played with sacred. Now sacred plays no more. You survived the deal. That's the real miracle. You were never the backup. You were the breakthrough. When she arrived, God rose. The paper burned. Your peace began. He didn't protect your name. God will. You were replaced in their eyes, but not in God's plan. She walked in. Heaven responded. Her shadow hit your spirit before her footsteps did. He agreed to terms that didn't include your healing. God's justice doesn't need your permission. She came last night, but dawn belongs to you. You begged to stay. God begged you to let go. Your exit is God's entrance. Let her have him. You've been chosen elsewhere. The deal was cursed the moment your name disappeared. The door she opened led to your deliverance. She didn't win. You were spared. You thought it was heartbreak. It was rescue. She came with confidence. God came with closure. You don't have to fight for what's already yours. Their contract ends. Your covenant begins. The detour was divine. God's no is your greatest protection. If this touched your soul, don't scroll, comment your favorite quote, and subscribe for more. The agreement was sacred. She shattered it in silence. Heaven recorded everything. She entered unseen. What she left behind will haunt your bloodline. That knock wasn't human. That night wasn't ordinary. You weren't dreaming. She stood over your spirit, and something left with her. A vow has been broken. The sky is trembling. She touched what wasn't hers. Now time is collapsing. God whispered, "Move fast. Delay will cost your peace." She smiled while signing your downfall. You felt the chill. That was her regret arriving too late. What she stole isn't physical. It was your divine covering. This betrayal wasn't random. She's done it before. You were warned in dreams. Last night was the consequence. Angels backed away. Her presence was not of light. She didn't come for you. She came for what was hidden in you. Your name was chanted in a room that smelled like sulfur. God tried to stop her. You ignored the vision. Your spirit cried out as she approached, but you mistook it for longing. That kiss in the dream was a curse in disguise. She left a mark no eye can see, but your soul feels it. You thought it was closure. It was a contract. Your deal was altered when you trusted her with your silence. She didn't knock. She was invited by the ache you never healed. That night was a test. You didn't pass. The air changed. So did your fate. Her hands were warm, but her spirit was ice. That wasn't a reunion. It was an extraction. What you lost wasn't her. It was God's protection. She smiled while unbinding the promise meant for you. You weren't supposed to answer. That's where the fracture began. God waited for you to close the door. You left it open. Her arrival broke a seal you were meant to guard. Your destiny trembled when she whispered your name. Something shifted in your chest. That was your soul resisting. She only comes when you're too tired to fight. You felt peace, then a flood of silence. That was her taking root. That night wasn't hers to enter. She crossed without heaven's permission. A spirit watched the moment she touched your forehead. Your strength didn't leave. It was seduced into forgetting itself. The enemy doesn't always knock. Sometimes it remembers the spare key. God wept the moment you said, "Come in." What you thought was love was an undoing in disguise. She walked through your dream, but the damage bled into the day. You felt seen, but she only looked for what she could steal. Your name was on the altar, but she added hers. Her silence was louder than the scream you buried. You gave her access. She brought others. This is not heartbreak. It's spiritual trespass. The lights flickered for a reason. You weren't alone. You're not losing your mind. You're watching a curse unfold. If this touched your soul, don't scroll. Comment your favorite quote and subscribe for more. She didn't say goodbye because she plans to return. What left you that night wasn't love, it was discernment. She found the crack. Now she's trying to crawl through it. You are under spiritual surveillance. That shiver wasn't fear. It was God saying, "Get up now." The deal broke, but not before branding your spirit. There was a contract in your sleep. You signed it unknowingly. God tried to interrupt. You mistook warning for rejection. You think she's gone, but she lingered in your choices. Every decision since then has been infected by that night. You weren't wrong for loving her, but love doesn't require possession. You never kissed her, but your spirit remembers the taste. She didn't come to stay. She came to confuse. What she whispered was not hers to speak. That wasn't nostalgia. That was manipulation. You thought it was fate. It was a trap. Her return wasn't random. She was sent. She speaks of peace but walks in deception. God has revoked what she thought she could keep. You're being freed. That's why she returned, to rebind you. Her eyes were mirrors. You saw your own wounds. Stop trying to resurrect what God buried for your survival. Every time you remember her, you relive the curse. She didn't come to love. She came to harvest. Your agreement was spiritual. And now the heavens are dissolving it. She doesn't miss you. She misses what God gave you. The ache is real, but so is your calling. Don't apologize for closing doors that led to destruction. God is tearing the soul tie gently for your sake. That dream was a visitation, and you weren't supposed to answer. You saw her shadow before you saw her smile. That matters. She laughed while heaven warned. Every night since, you've been trying to unfeel her. The silence she left behind is screaming in tongues. Stop revisiting what was only meant to awaken you once. She studied your wounds, then entered through them. You didn't fall. You were pulled. God saw you hesitate. He still covered you. There are no words for what she did, but your soul remembers. This pain isn't heartbreak. It's a spiritual theft. You're not crazy. She did return, just not in the flesh. That voice you heard after she left? Not yours. The moment you almost texted her, he intervened. It's not over, but it will be soon. You still smell her memory, but that's just residue. What God is doing now will burn every trace of her. She wasn't your home. She was the earthquake. Her return was your test. You're passing now. Don't go back. There's nothing left but a hollow echo. The heavens waited until you were ready to see her clearly. She left your room, but part of her is still hiding behind your heartbeat. You're not tired. You're spiritually bruised from what she took. That wasn't closure. It was her trying to reopen what God sealed. Don't confuse her return with divine timing. This is interference. She comes bearing comfort, but leaves you numb. You've been mourning someone still alive. That should tell you everything. Her absence doesn't mean she's gone. The silence after her visit is louder than any scream. She doesn't want you healed. She wants you haunted. You remembered her because she called you in your sleep. That ache in your chest? It's where she laid her name. Her beauty was a weapon, and it worked. You kept the memory. She kept the power. She traded your trust for temporary control. You weren't weak. You were wide open. God didn't allow her back to love you, only to show you truth. You heard her voice again because your soul forgot who it belonged to. What she touched now flickers with imbalance. You prayed for clarity. She came to confuse. Her name now burns on the tongue of angels. That text wasn't from her. It was from what's behind her. She came last night, yes, but not alone. You think it's guilt. It's spiritual residue. You didn't fall for her. You fell through her. Stop calling it love. You're romanticizing spiritual warfare. That ring in your ear was not random. She was near. God had to shake you, or you'd let her stay. Her smile cracked your discernment. You were the assignment, not the desire. She read your pain like scripture and preached it back to you wrong. You were meant to rise. She returned to delay it. That peace wasn't real. It was sedative sorrow. She kissed your spirit, not your lips. And that's what hurt. God is still trying to retrieve what she hid in you. She wore your name like perfume until it lost meaning. Her eyes weren't searching. They were targeting. If this touched your soul, don't scroll. Comment your favorite quote and subscribe for more.